How you guys doing?
Good, thank you. How are you today, George?
Man, you're always so loud. You must have a really good mic.
I don't know, because I'm not speaking very loudly. I apologize.
That's all right. Oh, here we go.
I was
again.
on another Zoom call this morning and my audio, I guess, was breaking up a little bit. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine right now.
Yes.
Okay. We'll see how it goes. At least I'm not doing most of the presenting. Just have the breakout room.
Oh, there, you faded out. Greg, are you? Yeah, your audio just went out.
I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, it's like going in and out.
Terrible. It's just not working.
Yeah, it's in and out, unfortunately.
Well, son of a gun.
Okay.
I made both of you co-hosts so you can record and everything.
Can you guys see that?
Can you hear me on my phone better?
Yes.
Can we do it that way where I have my computer on and you can see me with the computer video and hear me with the phone audio?
Yeah,
I'm not sure how to record from my phone if I was in the breakout room.
I think you could still record from your laptop, right?
Yes, as long as I'm on both.
Oh, your Gmail account is the one that's set to go in the break room. So I guess I should put both of you in the break room.
Yes.
All right.
I did have a good call with Joe Makrovich yesterday. He wants to have another phone conversation this afternoon.
Okay, good.
It looks like they're getting to the point where with the new bishop, they're going to want to move the project forward. Things have been on hold between the change in the leadership in the diocese with the new bishop and COVID-19. It kind of put the brakes on things for a while there, but it was a really good meeting yesterday.
It sounds like it went really well.
Hello, Mr. Baxmeyer. You're muted. You're muted. Still can't hear you.
And it says you're muted on the screen, but you're coming through loud and clear.
Yep, because I have my phone hooked up and I have my computer hooked up. The computer allows me to record if I'm in the breakout session. I don't know how to do that off my phone. I don't know where the video recording would go and how that all would work.
Gotcha.
And my sound works better over my phone than it does the computer for whatever reason.
It does sound good. It sounds like you're right here.
Hey, Greg, welcome. How are you?
I'm not seeing a option for him for sound.
He's connecting.
Carl, I made you a co-host so you can record.
Thank you.
Still says connecting audio. There you go.
Okay.
Now he can
there.
unmute.
I unmuted him.
All right, I'm here.
Now we've got him.
There you are.
You would think after 4 months it would have gotten easier.
Yeah, it's always one of those things, right?
Yeah, and you guys have the nice headsets. Have you found those to be pretty beneficial?
Well, from my standpoint, I just know that for whatever reason, the way my computer is set up, it creates an incredible echo for everybody else. And wearing the headset eliminates that. And it does kind of, I don't know, it frees you up a little bit. You
Right.
can actually go over and get a cup of coffee and still stay in the conversation.
And I had, prior to using the wireless earbuds, had connection through, through that earbuds. And what I found was the microphone would often get caught in my collar.
Okay.
And so that would create all sorts of feedback. And it was a wise choice on my part to do something a little more 21st century.
So we're just waiting for folks to join. Now, is Nikki going to join?
Yeah, I would assume so. I didn't hear otherwise.
Okay. Yeah, it's starting to get, go ahead, Greg.
And well, yeah, George, just curious about the practical side of the PowerPoint presentation. You're going to be driving that, correct?
Yeah, and if I'm going to try to anticipate, when you're getting ready to go to the next slide.
Okay.
But if it seems like I'm too slow, it's fine. Just say
Nod your head.
or just say next slide. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Happy to do that. Thank you.
Unless you want to drive. I mean, I think let me just see if there's a way to.
Yeah, it's especially with the recording, depending upon whose screen is being recorded and everything.
Here, Greg, I just gave you the power to move the slides. So
Right.
just go ahead and click on the slide, see if that works. It says waiting for Greg. Oh, it's Greg Monberg. It's the wrong Greg. All right, try that. See if you can move the slides.
Morning, Tom. Good
Oh,
afternoon.
there you go.
Is that working okay?
Looks like it's working. And Greg, you moved that slide, right? Oh, we can't hear Greg.
You're muted again for whatever reason, Greg. In the lower left-hand corner, there's an unmute button.
Yeah, that's really strange how that happened. Can you hear me now, though?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I did move the screen forward.
Okay. All
Do
right.
we want to let anybody into the meeting? It looks like Ann Flout is looking to get in.
Now, let me just get back here. Okay. Sure, let her in.
Just let me know when you want me to let everyone in. Okay.
We're still waiting on Nikki, right?
Yes.
Morning again, George.
Well, good morning, Tom. How are you?
Doing well. Actually, afternoon, isn't it? Sorry, again. Doing well.
Seems like morning.
Boy, it's been a morning.
Yep. It's definitely starting to heat up out there.
Yes.
Well, at least it's a beautiful sunny day, so that's a good thing.
Right.
So while we're waiting, I've got this icebreaker. And in the chat box, if you just take a moment to note how schools can provide face-to-face instruction and be safe and feel cohesive. I think the cartoon really kind of shows the differences between currently kind of where we are and where we really want to be, and how do we create that safe environment for schools. And I see that you've joined. Welcome. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes. Now, Greg, as we're waiting, what are some of the biggest challenges that you guys are facing right now? Because schools are getting ready to open and no one's really sure how to open at this point, especially with the governor extending the executive order.
Yeah, I think it's the uncertainty of it, you know, and what are we supposed to be doing to support our customers in a way that's of value? You know, there's only so much you can do without, you know, details on what the reopening may or may not look like. So yeah, it's definitely a challenging time is an understatement.
Okay. Yeah, it's, I think we're all learning a lot of different things and different ways to do things. So, you know, as we continue to move through this, I just hope that they develop that vaccine like way sooner than later.
Yeah, and it seems to be that there's such a dichotomy between those who feel that, and it's unfortunately it's gotten political, it shouldn't be, but there's the group that feels kids aren't at risk or they're the least at risk, and others like myself are just on the continuum of you got to be safe, you got to be smart about it, got to be safe. If you have the vaccine, if we have it, when we get it, that'll help significantly.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
Well, it's 1 o'clock. So Nikki, welcome. I saw that you've joined, so thank you for joining.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Fantastic. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is George Kakan. I will be the facilitator today, and I'm also the regional director of architecture for Wightman. And I am an REFP, which is a recognized educational facility planner. The reason we have started these town hall meetings and continue to do them is to provide a platform for superintendents to learn and become informed and ask questions and share their best practices. I know that today we'll be dealing with getting students and teachers back to school safely and navigating what's next. I know that school districts have been charged with so many different challenges since this whole thing started. I know even in my own school district, I got a note yesterday stating that they will be offering a choice. This is the first time I've heard that, where students can either participate in person or online. So there's a lot of different ways that we're going to get our kids back to school. So I wanted to introduce Nikki. Thank you for joining us today and being a guest. Nikki is the Vice President of Business Relations at Custer, Inc. They are a premier furniture provider for not only schools, but for the workplace. And then we also have Gregg Cothern, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, Gregg, who is the Regional Educational Manager for Steelcase Education. and he works on safe learning environment strategies as well as sharing design and safety guidelines as they are developed and researched. Also today we have Dr. Tom Langdon, who is a part-time superintendent and mentor at Walkerville Public Schools. He is also an educational consultant with Wightman and provides a lot of in-depth knowledge as it relates to educational planning for our team and our clients. So with that, I'd like to just turn this over to Gregg Cothern to talk about navigating what's next. And Gregg, just give me a moment here and I'll see if I can get the control button over to you.
Like I now have control.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. Yeah, it's the first time in a long time for me. So George, thank you. I appreciate very much this opportunity to spend some time with you and the Wightman team and the audience. And very, very excited to spend the next few minutes talking about some things that we've learned over the last 4 months as an organization that really wants to understand our customers' needs and what they're going through regardless of the situation. And you know, as George said, I'm the regional education manager for Steelcase Education, and I focus exclusively on the state of Michigan, both the upper and lower peninsula, Northeast Indiana, and Northwest Ohio. For those of you who may not be familiar with Steelcase, we're a global manufacturer of contract furniture, and we focus primarily on the office environment, but also healthcare and education. Educators may be familiar with a company called Smith System. Smith System is a manufacturer of primarily K-5 furniture that we acquired about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. Most of the products that Steelcase manufactures for the education market really is for, I would say, the 8, 9 through higher ed. We had an opportunity to complement our existing product portfolio by acquiring Smith System that really focuses more on the K-5 market. So just a little bit about Steelcase. And then also too, we manufacture the products and then we distribute through an authorized Steelcase dealer network, which is so important in our world in that the dealer can make and break any installation, post-installation. And we're really, really lucky in Michigan to be supported on the western side of the state and then also into Northeast Indiana by Custer, which is where Nikki is an employee. And then on the east side of the state, we work through NBS. So just a little bit high-level overview of Steelcase and our dealer network. So today's discussion is really about navigating what's next and how do we get students and teachers back to school safely. And see if I can advance this. All right, so hopefully everybody's seeing a slide that shows navigating what's next post-COVID learning spaces. All of what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes is contained in a document that you can download from the Steelcase Education website. And it's not in a PowerPoint format, it's a PDF. So I would encourage you after we get off the call today, if you wanted to download this, feel free to go to the education website and it'll ask you for name and your email address, and then they'll send you the copy of the what's next. And as I mentioned, we as an entity have gained a significant amount of information, knowledge, understanding over the last 4 months about, what our customers are doing, primarily the K-12 and also the higher education institutions, on the uncertainty around COVID-19 and what does that mean for them both in the near term but also in the future. And it's really caused many of us and many of those organizations to rethink how they deliver education. And it's in some ways has created new ways, new methods of delivering. And we're looking more and more at becoming better at what we're doing. And we found that many have had to rethink their existing capabilities and provide more blended in-person and remote learning experiences. And obviously the foundation of any of this that we're talking about, both currently or in the future, is all about the safety and well-being of the students, the educators, and the administrators. We've had the benefit of going through shutdowns on our manufacturing side of the operations, where we've been able to learn a great deal from those shutdowns and how do we re-engage into operations. And a lot of those things that we've learned have been relevant to what we're doing in our education vertical, and how important it is to create safe environments, both in the physical way, but also in that cognitive way that people see the cleanliness, see the safety, and they feel safe about being back at school. We have for a long time as an organization found that designing for well-being is paramount in any classroom or any school. And that really deals with the physical, the cognitive, and the emotional side of well-being. You really have to have all three of those. Foundationally, with safety now being even more important than it's ever been before. So making, again, the students, the faculty, the administrators feel safe, you know, and literally be safe from a cleanliness standpoint, and then also have the ability to feel as if they're in a place that they can learn and they can teach their students. One of the biggest challenges that our customers have been facing is the existing design of classrooms. We have focused so much of our efforts over the last decade on active learning, and really how that design doesn't necessarily warrant itself in this COVID world. And if I could back up, you know, we've entitled some of this as post-COVID learning environments. I think that post needs to be removed and just referred to it as COVID learning spaces and environments. I don't know that this is going to completely go away. So we're really dealing with, you know, how can we minimize the effect of the pathogen and create learning spaces in a COVID world. So reconfigurability is incredibly important. Common spaces have been designed around, you know, collaboration and close contact, high density, where you're working on projects with your team, high mobility, and also focused on well-being. So what that has allowed us to do, and our customers to do, is to relook at how they're designing their existing education spaces. And what we've determined is that things are being viewed on a now, near, and far continuum. The now and the near are becoming more and more blended, in my opinion. Again, I think when we started our research and our understanding, you know, in February, March, I think the thought was that this would ultimately go away, and we would be dealing with, you know, a post-COVID environment. I think now it's becoming more of you're dealing with the now, you're dealing with bringing students back, but that's more in the near term because we don't have clarity around when schools are going to reopen, if they're going to reopen at all in the fall. But again, focusing on the now, near, and the far. And the now is really about what do we know about COVID, and how can we retrofit our existing classroom spaces to, you know, to provide the safety and the, you know, the protocols that are necessary. The near is more based on the science of what we've learned about the pathogen, and very data driven. And that involves reconfiguring existing spaces. And then the far is really all about reinventing educational delivery and capitalizing on the blended of in-person and virtual. And how can you be prepared to have a quality education in this far spectrum of the COVID world. So when you deal with the now, I mentioned bringing back students, faculty, staff, maybe not at 100% capacity, but you're bringing people in maybe 20, 30% of capacity. I'm jumping ahead here. We know that remote learning is going to continue with many students. I know in the state of Michigan, if you're in phases 1 through 3, which we're pretty much all in now, that in-person classroom learning is not happening, and so the remote learning is certainly going to continue. And a lot of it is about common sense approach to preventing the spread of the disease. So, you know, talking about adding protocols, the cleaning regimen, the creating the 6-foot separation between individuals. It's about masks, wearing masks, making that a priority and a requirement. In the near, again, is about bringing more and more of students back, whether that's 60, 70, 100%. You know, you're preparing for being ready to present all in-person classes with the virtual being included as part of that. And, you know, you have to reconfigure the learning spaces using that science and the data that we have all understood, or we now understand about COVID. And then you know, we talked about how it's reinventing organizations' capabilities in how they deliver their education. So making sure that you have a robust technology platform that allows you to deliver content in such a way that it's providing a good experience. You're going to be looking at a lot of things that we don't even necessarily have a full grasp on right now. So how does the HVAC impact the students and the breathing of the pathogens? What about products that have yet to be developed that are you know, pathogen free? Touchless devices. So you're a lot more apt to see the reinvention of learning spaces being redesigned. And certainly one of the common themes that we've heard and totally understand, both from a Steelcase and a customer perspective, and that is you've got to create a sense of community. People really are longing for that now. We've been working out of our homes for 4 months or so. I've had the opportunity to go back to Steelcase a couple times. While it's not quite the same experience, it does feel good to be back and be working with colleagues, because there is a lot of value in that. And I know that transcends the education world as well. As far as design considerations, I want to make sure that we emphasize the word considerations. There is no one single answer, or no one has all the answers. These are not recommendations, but they're rather design considerations. And most important, as you look at redesigning spaces, so whether it's retrofitting, whether it's reconfiguring, or whether it's reinventing, you know, you have to consider the density, the number of people per square feet, the geometry of the furniture and how it's arranged. And then divisional components, meaning how can you add screens, panels, or barriers to help deflect or exclude the pathogens from transferring. On the density side, again, fairly self-explanatory, but creating a minimum of 6 feet between students. You're reducing the occupancy of the space and the density by removing seats or removing desks. You're using open spaces with flexible furniture that allow you to pull in movable whiteboards to create screens and boundaries. And you're having more owned spaces. So rather than having a desk that's shared by multiple instructors, if at all possible, you know, you can create a owned workstation for the instructor. The geometry is really dealing with reorienting the way the furniture is laid out. And that's pretty important to eliminate the face-to-face orientation. We also see a checkered board pattern being used quite a bit in larger environments where individuals are not directly in front of or behind. But if you envision a checkerboard, you've got pieces that are diagonally close to one another, and then separating desks. Obviously, doing that is going to help with elimination or reduction in the pathogen transfer. And then division is all about adding space division, whether it's a screen, a movable screen, a plexiglass partition, storage elements, plants, partitions, privacy devices too that can reduce exposure. And if you can't necessarily attain that 6-foot separation, that is pretty much a requirement, adding height in creating those barriers and divisions is very helpful as well. So what these next few slides represent are the environments that are currently designed. And if you look at the schematic to your left, it's a classroom that's set or arranged in a more formal environment where it's a lecture rows with two students per desk, a teacher station or desk in front. And then the common spaces, again, you've got people right next to each other, clearly not within a 6-foot or clearly within a 6-foot distance of one another. So the challenge is really, how do you take these two spaces and using the space division, the geometry, and the barriers to create spaces for the now, the near, and the far. This is an entire floor plan under the old way of design. The old way of design is not an appropriate description, but the ways in which we've designed historically. And you can see in the lower third of the diagram is more of the rows and columns. The yellow desks are more of the group project work. And then in the interior, you have the common spaces, whether that's lounge seating, some privacy, and then more group space meetings. So in this particular schematic, we're showing the before and the after. And the after is really all about taking the existing space and incorporating the density. So you're removing seats. As you can see, you've got one seat removed from each of these workstations here, and the same with the rows and columns. You've changed some of the geometry to reduce or diminish the face-to-face. And then you're adding some screens, although they're not quite visible in this schematic, but there may be some partitions that are that have been added to help with the reduce the pathogen spread. Traffic flow is another area that we have seen a lot of consideration given to. This is that same floor plan, and you can see the exterior of the floor plan as you exit a room, a classroom. You're moving in a counterclockwise direction. Those circles that you see in each of the classrooms represent the 6 feet minimum distance. And then in the interior of the floor plan with the common areas or common spaces, you're actually moving in a clockwise direction. In the next few slides, we're going to show you some considerations, taking into consideration the density, division, and barrier. Active learning classroom in the before environment, as you can see on the left, lower left-hand corner, you're definitely not abiding by the 6-foot minimum distance between students. You've got 2 chairs at each of the desks, so pretty compact space. A lot of ways for COVID to be spread. And in this lecture mode, you have removed a lot of the seating. So 1 seat per table has been removed. You've changed the geometry of the table somewhat to reduce the flow of the pathogens. You've added division. So this is a common theme that we see, and that is adding some sort of a screen at the desktop level. Here you've got acrylic screens that have been affixed to the work surface on all three sides. You have a screen that's in front of the current teacher's desk, which is movable. So he or she can move that with them as they move across the room, and it shields them from the students. This is, again, the same classroom in a lecture mode where you've changed the seating platform. So you've gone to the node, which has a storage component underneath. You've got mobile carts with cleaning supplies, which is a huge, huge component to planning for the now and the near. And, you know, in the case of Steelcase, we have a clean in, clean out policy. So if we're at a workstation at our headquarters, we have the ability through, you know, disinfectant to clean the work surface when we get there. And then as you leave, you're doing the same thing. Some of the same principles apply here with density. You've reduced the number of seats. You've added division, again, at the work surface level. And the instructor, or the screen in front of the instructor's stand, is still there as well. In a group mode environment where you've moved from the lecture mode into a group configuration, again, you're abiding by the 6-foot minimum distance. You have a cleaning cart. You have the node chairs. You have geometry of the workstation such that they're not facing one another. And again, the screen is there to protect both the students and the instructor if they move across the room. Here's the classroom environment. We have a significant number of thought starters that we can provide. This just happens to be one example of a K-5 class. You can see in the upper left where my cursor is, where you've got a highly condensed area of students. The configuration below is what you see in the main floor plan, and that is, again, through density, through division, and then through adding barriers between the student workstations have all been used to create a COVID learning environment. Common spaces, library learning commons is an area that we see a lot of change needing to take place. Again, historically been based on a lot of people in a small, could be a small area, you know, people getting together and collaborating. This is a common space in a kind of a before mode where you've got a pure student across from student, whether it's on the left in the benching application or whether it's in the middle where you've got the smaller workstations. And as you look at the 6-foot separation, clearly not in play there. And here's that same space where you've added mobile screens for division. You've added desktop division, both horizontally and vertically. So the students across from one another are not talking directly at one another. You've reduced the number of seats at these workstations or these tables. You've added a plexiglass screen before, and again, it doesn't have to be plexiglass. It can be a multiple array of products, whiteboard, tackable solution, etc. You've got a cleaning cart, and then you've changed the geometry of some of these soft seats on your right, so they're angled away from the person in front of the back. Same common space area with just a different product configuration. You've added some Brody, if you're familiar with Brody. These are kind of self-contained seats. So you've changed the geometry of those. You've added more individual spaces along the back wall. You've got some divisional barriers. And then to the right, you have pods, which we're seeing a lot more of in the education world, where they allow for privacy. You can get away and have space for the individual. So I went through that pretty quickly, but we wanted to make sure that you're aware of additional resources that are available on at Steelcase Education. I mentioned earlier that you have the ability to download this presentation. We have a lot of information on safety and materials cleanability. We also have an entire screen portfolio. We were an organization that was able to manufacture products for the essential workers. At the time, the manufacturing was shut down, so we created a plexiglass screen for the healthcare environment that we're now using in education and corporate environments, but we have an entire portfolio of screens that we can share with the group as well. Again, here's some couple websites for the materials as well as the cleanability on some fabrics. And then this is our commitment to our customers, and it really deals with us learning. This is not something that we're going to stop learning. We're going to continue to learn. We're going to continue to better understand how we can support our customers, and our commitment is that we will share that information with all of you as we learn more. And with that, I thank you, and I'm going to hand it back to you, George. Or you can take it back for me, whatever works.
George, you're muted. George, you're still on mute.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Now we can, yes.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Gregg, thank you so much for that presentation. That was fantastic. I think there's a lot of really great ideas, and I know that we have probably several questions for you, and we'd like the audience to also participate in this next portion. We have some general questions as it relates to your presentation, and I'd like to just get some of your insight. So one of the first questions I'd like to ask is, Dr. Langdon, you know, as a superintendent, what are the things that you saw in here that you think, or that you really liked, and that you think could be very useful as you begin and plan to bring students back to school?
Yeah, the big issues right now, and parents have really been talking to superintendents about it, the whole mask issue. And, you know, do we have to wear masks? Do we not have to? You know, masks are going to be very important in phase 4. But during this presentation, as Gregg presented it again, I agree, a great presentation, is his use of the plexiglass. You know, we're so very concerned about the fact that how are students going to express themselves? What if a student actually cannot wear a mask? Because the roadmap is very clear that if you are not supposed to wear a mask, you cannot wear a mask. For those situations where it's intolerable, the plexiglass is going to be critical to be able to have people see each other and understand what's going on, and maybe even be closer proximity. We're going to find out more, but you know, I had a town hall with my school last night with the principal and myself, and we had probably close to half of the parents at that. And one of the biggest issues, again, was the mask issue. And I would like that, you know, and I see Steelcase always being progressive and looking at what's the next step. Could we find a way to, you know, talk to the state officials and say, could we find a way to not have to have the masks or limit the masks, at least in the classroom, for the older students, so that we can pick up on expressions, those kind of things. I'm not sure if that's possible, but I can see Steelcase being on the front end of that to make it possible, if that were a possibility. So, and I also see the progression of what's going on in the last 3 or 4 months in the industries, and appreciate Steelcase for coming on today, but also for the work they've been doing.
And Tom, if I could just comment, I was at Steelcase yesterday. I had a customer that was there to see space, some of our applications, and we have a mask as mandatory policy at Steelcase, whether it's us as an employee or our guests. And I agree 100% with you. You cannot pick up on facial expressions. You hope people are smiling behind it. You can kind of tell by the eyes whether or not they are. But it's going to be a challenge. I don't know if there's a good answer for the question of doing away with masks in the classroom. There's definitely, value in wearing those from a health and safety standpoint, but I think you are going to lose a lot of that, connectivity with students and faculty if you're not able to see the facial expressions.
Well, and the big point is teachers trying to teach a lesson, and they can really gauge by just a sweep of the classroom by how their students are responding with their facial features. You're right, and I know there's clear masks you can use and that kind of thing, but boy, if we could get on that piece of it. But I appreciate the proximity, logistics that you presented today. All those things in the meantime are going to be very important for us to succeed as we reopen in the fall. So,
well, thanks for that, Dr. Langdon and Gregg. Nikki, I'm going to ask you a question. As it relates to some of the early slides that Gregg had shared, what are you hearing from various school districts that you're currently working with in terms of, reducing the density in the classroom? It looks like in some cases by 50%. And will dividers help increase the density? And I'm assuming, based on what I've read, that wearing masks allows you to be within that 6-foot circle. But then, that is counterintuitive to what Dr. Langdon just explained.
Yeah, well, I think it's hard, and as it pertains specifically to K through 12 school districts, I think we're all in the same boat with density, because we've been packing these classrooms with 32 to 39 students for so long, and it's a bigger thing than just moving around the classroom furniture that you have. It's more of an architectural challenge to really accommodate for more space for more students. So, with Custer installing projects this summer that, we had underway, and we were specifying furniture solutions for these school districts that are preparing to go back in the fall, it wasn't changing a lot as it pertained to the number of students they were anticipating to be in every classroom. We were really providing them with furniture to have that same density of students. So, what Gregg just presented with moving around and having the geometry of existing furniture in place is just going to be a school by school or a district by district decision to really decrease the density per classroom. We can provide the solutions just to give those students and those school districts a little bit more flexibility. I think that one of the key things when it comes to furniture specifically that we've been talking to schools, we've seen this transition of more mobility and more flexibility, giving a student an individual chair and work surface to move around the classroom. And I see that kind of being a solution instead of having a static desk that, on glides that you can't move around, having a student have an own desk and being able to move, that safe 6 feet distance away from each other in the classroom is going to be really helpful, just to have some flexibility in the classroom and move around and learn the way they need to and stay at a safe social distance.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think there's a lot to be said to have mobile furniture, both seating and desk. It helps to reconfigure space. I know Gregg talked about Lecture Mode and also group work mode. So you can very quickly reconfigure a space if the furniture is mobile, but that doesn't seem to be the norm. It seems to be more the exception, although more school districts are moving that way. I'd like to just ask the audience, and I noticed, Ann, you're unmuted. Do you have a question for Gregg or Nikki or Dr. Langdon?
She said she'll type her question since she doesn't have a microphone.
Okay, if you can just keep an eye on that. What
George,
about
can
our?
I
Go ahead.
just make a comment that what we are seeing and hearing from, and it's primarily from our higher education customers, is a concern about acquiring furniture that may not be necessary in a period of time. So, there's reluctance to purchase a lot of, and I'm talking specifically about the more plexiglass division.
Yeah.
And freestanding. And there's been a lot of customers who said, you know, we want to make sure that we're acquiring, if we are going to purchase product, it's going to be product that is going to be usable down the road. So our response to that is absolutely. We're not advocating that you buy furniture for the sake of that, but if there's a way to create division primarily through whiteboards, movable marker boards, there are never enough marker boards in a higher education environment from our perspective, which is what we hear a lot. So, you know, that's a great way to you know, prepare for the existing and the now and the near, and then also having the ability to use that in the short term as well.
Well, thank you for that. Go ahead.
So we had looked into some of the plastic, and it's really difficult to get prior to school starting. So now we're trying to figure out, all right, what other options do we have for getting the kids back in the classroom and maintaining the distance? Because we don't feel that students are getting the education that they need from home. And then at a higher level, there's concerns about, you know, cheating, all the stuff that takes place in the classroom that a teacher can deal with that you can't deal with, you know, remotely. So I guess we haven't decided exactly how we're returning to school, but we seem to hit roadblocks in each of the ways that we try to look at the best way to proceed.
Yeah, it really seems like most of the mandates and the requirements and the recommendations really go against the grain of educating students in what's best for students. Obviously, health is number one, and we've got to make sure that we're healthy and safe. And these are definitely very challenging times to try to figure that out and have that level of comfort. So any idea of how we can get more dividers, especially the clear ones? And I don't know, maybe this group collectively can invent a recyclable divider that once schools are done with them and they're no longer needed, that maybe we can make something else out of them, like tablets or something.
I think that the, you know, Gregg's point in using as many mobile whiteboards as possible is probably the best way to repurpose dividers, just because they can be used so much in the classroom. I know Gregg mentioned that Steelcase has a partnership with Smith Systems, and that company actually released a free design that's downloadable for a stand that could be 3D printed. That wouldn't necessarily solve the issue of having plexiglass, because plexiglass is hard to come by in terms of materiality right now. But this 3D printed almost divider would allow you to slip in cardboard or some you know, rigid material into something that you could actually print at your schools on a 3D printer really affordably, and it wouldn't be something that you need to invest in heavily, knowing that hopefully we'll be getting rid of those in the future.
Thank you.
Well,
one of the issues, George, I think one of the issues that we have to remember is that right now we can wear masks in the classroom, be closer. And you know, there's studies out there that say that, you know, 24 is the optimum number for a classroom. What they don't really read into that is the fact that 30 is too much. But interestingly, under 16 is too little to have a real classroom discussion, conversation, that kind of thing. And I understand, you know, there is a dearth of plexiglass out there, but if you could, you know, have a desk that would have the ability to just kind of pop in pegs a plexiglass in and take out when needed, because we're talking about new viruses coming up after COVID, mutations of the COVID. That would be a way to be able to still have the conversations in class, teachers being able to see the expressions of the students. In the meantime, we have some great products out there. Steelcase is making others in other industry-wide leaders. However, that would, to me, as an administrator, I'm only speaking as a superintendent, but knowing the data, knowing some of the research, that to me would be the holy grail.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Dr. Langdon. And I do have one more question as it relates to the cleaning carts, because we know that is an important protocol, not only in schools, but also in the businesses that that we participate in our own business. When we go out to stores, you constantly see them wiping things down. Who actually does the cleaning? And I'll take that from any of the school folks.
I think the last part it got garbled rather, George, of your comment.
Yeah, I was going to say, if there's a cleaning cart in the classroom and there's all the supplies, who actually does the cleaning? Is that the students? Is it the teacher? Is it the maintenance staff? I'm sure it's not the superintendent, but it might be.
Probably sometimes, but we are looking at getting some ancillary staff that will be there all day for things such as cleaning. We have to clean every 4 hours at least, and you know, at the bathroom area, you got to clean the doorknobs. Those guys, if you don't have a foot dragger on the bottom of the door, but other things like being able to man, or person, I should say, the quarantine room. If a child gets sick, they are instructed by the reopening phases, to have them in that room. You need to have somebody there with them to comfort them and to allow them to continue their studies while they're waiting for their parents. So we'll have a couple people all day long just doing those tasks to try to take care of the cleaning and the taking care of if there is a quarantine room person, and even covering a teacher if need be, if they have to go out because they have the fever during the day, that kind of thing.
Well, thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up. We want to just make sure that
Did you see the chat box too, George? I don't know if you're tracking on that. There were some comments from Ann. I wanted to make sure we had those covered.
I just have one comment also regarding the personnel doing the cleaning. Our school district is actually looking at utilizing some of our bus drivers in those off hours and doing some cross training so that we can have the additional people in the buildings in order to help support some of the cleaning mechanisms.
That's a good idea.
Okay, I was just reading Ann's comments here, and I think the question was, you know, what are the percentages of students or families that are willing or want to send their children back to school, and the ones that want to keep them at home?
Right, and so there's an issue of density that if you did have half the number of seats in the room, how do you accommodate those other 50% of the students? Are they in the buildings in some non-traditional location like the cafeteria or a gym where you're able to accommodate more students? Or are they trying to learn in the classroom with the students who are physically present and doing it online from home? And you know, how would that be managed? Are you using technology so that students learn from home? And how do the parents and really the teachers manage that classroom setting if half the students they're teaching aren't actually in the room?
And we had that question last night at the town hall. It was of great interest for parents, and they do not want to have their students half on, half off every other day. They don't want the half day situation either. So I think the majority of schools, in fact, I'm positive the majority of schools are going to opt for the mask scenario. Again, there's an issue there with if you cannot wear a mask, then you are directly told not to wear a mask. So there's going to be some issues with students not being masked, maybe even some staff members not being masked, maybe even a bus driver not being masked, because that's the law, right? Well, that's the reopening dictate right now. So there's gonna be a lot of questions we have to answer as we go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another one of Ann's comments were that she was saying in her district, absolutely, the students are not to do the cleaning. That has to be other school staff like the custodians, and that they're hoping that their teachers will agree to help clean where required in between classes, but that all student desks would be cleaned in the 5-minute passing period, and that custodians will do the cleaning of all the doors, bathrooms, a minimum every 4 hours. So I imagine that's at least twice during the school day, but that definitely the students are not allowed to be the ones responsible for the cleaning.
Correct. It's at least once during the school day, because the school day is typically contact hour 6.02 hours a day, plus you have some lunch there. So
right.
if they're Yeah, if they're cleaning when they get there, we can probably get away with one cleaning, but most schools would want to go 2 or 3 times even to keep it clean.
Right.
So, yeah.
As
If
well
I'm
as someone
real-
wiping down the desks every 5-minute passing period.
If I may, real quick, and I haven't spoken to many school districts about this option, but I know we've talked to a lot of small businesses and corporations about disinfectant fogging solutions. Custer actually owns a cleaning company called Century up here in Grand Rapids, and they're fairly affordably, there's a solution that you can actually put in fogging machines. It's not a toxic solution, but it would be done at night when the students and the teachers are not there. And they can actually use a machine with this fogging disinfectant to go through spaces. And the advantage to that is it gets on all your surfaces, it gets to your doorknobs, it gets to the hard to reach areas and disinfects surfaces without having to manually go in and wipe everything down. So I know a lot of companies, not just Century, our cleaning company, have the resources to do that with, you know, registered solutions that are known to kill the coronavirus on surfaces and in the air. And it is, you know, fairly affordable for a large square footage, and it's something that can be done very quickly, even if you're doing it just once a week to disinfect those hard to reach areas. So something to look into.
Right. Even into the keyboards of the computers, and they don't hurt the computer keyboards. It's a great product. Yeah, we're using that now, and it's an excellent product. You're right.
And Ann, since your microphone isn't working, if you could just let us know if we covered the questions that you answered, we'd appreciate that. Are there any other questions for our panel? Okay, Ann says yes, thank you. Appreciate all of the thoughts and suggestions. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We had several questions that I believe we did cover. And so from the standpoint of just the furniture and the arrangements, the cleaning, all of the things that are involved in getting students back to school, I don't think there's like a magic wand that we're going to be able to wave and say, okay, this is what everyone needs to do and everything's going to be fine. I think it's going to be probably more on an individual basis with many common themes, and then probably a variety of approaches and strategies in order to be able to deliver a quality education for the students. And with that, I'd like to just thank our panelists today and our guests for joining us. And our next Wednesdays with Wightman will be on July the 29th at 1 p.m. And we will have a guest on board whose name happens to also be Nikki. She sat on the governor's advisory committee for bringing students back to school, and she's going to provide us her insight from an inside view on what needs to be done, how they kind of got there, what's acceptable, and you know, what are the best practices regarding health and safety for not only students, but teachers, administrators, visitors, and the community as a whole. So again, thank you very much, and I really appreciate everyone's time. Have a really good day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Wightman.
George.
All right, thank you.
Bye now. Yep, thank you.
Bye
Thank
now.
you. Bye.